It's interesting. One of my, I don't know if I want to call it like most popular. I don't know, but I did a series last summer called Summer Simmer Sessions, where it was a 4-part series, and the first part I talked about how we kind of got into these spaces, especially those of us that were raised in church. So to potentially answer the question, or at least give a little bit of, a caveat, or, hey, have we considered this as a community, is what we learn from the pulpit. I no longer consider myself Christian. Is based on the religion. I still have my relationship. I view God in a much bigger space than I did when I was Christian. And when I sought out adults to talk about the things that were happening, to talk about issues I had with my mom, to talk about these spaces in church, there was a lot of failure there. And even in me being completely honest with you, the reverend that I grew up with, when I went to him to talk about my mom, he hit on me. So it was a huge thing for me to go, you know what? I gotta go. And for me, it was a safe space for me to walk away. And so what I think why these conversations are not talked about in the Black home is because they are shamed in the Black church. Wow. Everybody, this is something that I said on the slide, is just because you are not raised in church does not mean the church does not affect you. Yeah. So right. It is a lot of things that go unsaid in our community come from someone's pulpit, come from someone's space that, we don't air our laundry in the street. We don't talk about this, we don't do that. People are suffering. Right. Silently and not so silently because of that choice. And because we tend to uplift cishet men, especially in the Black church, the harm that they cause is usually swept under the rug. Well, most of the time swept under the rug. And then you have a lot of cishet women that cover that for them, because we can't speak ill of the man of the cloth, right, regardless of the harm that they're causing. So then you take that, you come home from church, and you're applying that logic, whether intentionally or not, to your household. So if your son does something where they harm your daughter, whether curiosity or any of those things, we're not necessarily going to shame him. We're going to ask her, what was she doing to cause him to do that? Like, it's a vicious cycle. And not many people are willing to have the conversation and go, hey, this is wrong. No, let's not even talk about the spaces of how this is not innate to us. This is not something that comes from us as far as like the Christianity that we know in this country. Let's not even talk about that. Right. Even from the space where so-and-so, like, I was raised in church. I went to private schools, plural. I know the ins and outs. I praise danced. I sang on the choir. I was youth president. I did everything you were supposed to do outside of being an usher. And church hurt is real. Very real. Right. I was harmed by my old reverend. I was harmed by people that covered for him and just acknowledge, well, that's just how he is. And then you take that home, and then it's, well, that's just how he is. Like, no. How long are we going to continue down that path? And then you wonder why youth suicide is the number that it is. You wonder why our generation, millennials, are leaving the church in droves. You wonder why. And deciding that we want to go into ATR spaces. We want to check out other religions. We want to be in spaces where we feel like we are safe to be who we are, if we're LGBT, if we're dealing with harm that has come from these spaces, and we're trying to unpack the things that have happened to us at home. Right. Where can we go? Because the church has proven itself to be unsafe. And let's not even talk about how the church does not talk about sex outside of a man and a woman inside marriage. Right.
Very right. No, you're right.
We don't talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to and I don't have to make this apology, but I want to say, I'm sorry that you experienced those things in church. I've experienced church hurt in other ways. I do identify as being a Christian, not the religious aspect of Christian. I believe in a spiritual walk with the Trinity and what that means. And people could call me an evangelical Christian, actually. I believe that the Holy Spirit lives inside of me. And if you get the Holy Spirit going, then I'm going to get riled up and I'm going to
run around this room.
And so, so I tell people this, and they don't always understand. I live in the New Testament. Do I read the Old? And there's a reason for it. I believe that when Christ came, he tore the veil, or the legalistic things that put a barrier between God and man having a relationship. And there's a lot of layers to what we're saying, because we could have like a really long conversation about sex in the church, in the shame and the secrets. And then it's hard because essentially we know that man, white, black, or whatever, has used this text to explain doing atrocious things, right?
Yes.
And you know, I've heard this pastor I love, his name's Darius Daniels, that the church is really an emergency room for broken people. So like everybody in here has got some brokenness, and you have to do your own walk. And I tell people, followers right here, whatever your religious or spiritual practice is, you need to know your book. You need to know your higher power of your understanding for yourself. You need to know your text for yourself. Because when I read the Bible, I was like, what Bible are these people reading? God is love. It's very simple. Love thy neighbor as thyself. But you have to know the God of love first.
Yeah.
But you're right. There is so much shame in the church around sex, because sometimes I'm just like, listen, if we shamed some other sins the way we shame sex, I mean, we could do some things, because God says there's no weight to sin, but you will hear that sexual promiscuity or whatever, or the horror narrative. And it's just a lot. And you and I, maybe we revisit that on some level. But it's interesting if we talk about shame. Recently, a friend of mine, she's no longer a friend, she called me Gomer. Gomer, as we know in the book of Hosea, was a prostitute. And Hosea told Gomer, God told Hosea to marry Gomer, and God used Gomer. But could you imagine your friend saying, listen, you told me your sexual deed, so that makes you a whore. I hate the word whore. I hate the word slut. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it with a passion. I feel like we have free will and free choice, and that does not allow me to shame somebody. Remember when Amber Rose was doing those slut shaming walks?
Yeah, the slut walks. Yep.
I was like, okay, sister, you do what you want to do with your body. Like we live in a country that's like, you can pursue happiness however you see fit. Well, no, that's not really true.
Right.
And there's a story in the Bible, and my followers know this. The woman at the well is who I identify with. The woman at the well had 5 husbands, and the man that she was with was not her husband. But the fact that Christ and God was still willing to offer her love was a transitional moment for me spiritually.
Yeah.
It's just very interesting. And I think that this is part of the discussion, you know, particularly with people of color who revere the church so much. Because for a while, that's all we had. And girl, we could just go down the gambit with that. And honestly, I'm so glad. Yeah, seriously, we can have like an ongoing series. But I want people to know about your YouTube channel and where they can find you.
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is actually named after my other company. It's called The Joy Element. So you can follow me there. I have not posted in a while, but the latest thing that I posted is a silent vlog. I really got into silent vlogs during the pandemic. It's actually how I got my anxiety to come down a little bit, when I just was like, I'll wake up and be like, and then I'll cut on the silent vlog and go, oh, that's nice.
What is that?
So silent vlogs is it's an offshoot of ASMR, where the person's face isn't normally seen. It's like you're getting a POV of what this person is doing. So
interesting.
It's really big in Asia, and they'll set up their camera and they'll have captions at the bottom, and they'll say, today is a day where you're going to follow me on my commute. It's silent because the actual person isn't talking, but it's the ambient noise that's happening in the background, where you're hearing the street, you're hearing the paw prints of their pet on the floor, you're hearing the vacuum, you're hearing the searing of the pot on the stove. Like, it's that type of thing. So one of the things I did do, and it's actually one of my highest my highest viewed videos on my YouTube channel. I put it out earlier this year. I did a silent vlog washing and charging my toys.
Your adult toys.
Making sure you get the inference. And so
to be clear,
just in case you're wondering. And so I am very big on sex toys because I believe it's one of the first tools that you can use in that recovering of yourself, especially after sexual assault. So I have a video of me in my room. You never see my face. It's just a regular day for me. And I go to wash my toys. So because YouTube is YouTube, there are only spaces that, like very small spaces, where you could actually get away with talking about sex toys and reviews about different things. And you can't even say vagina and all those things or penis or any of those things on YouTube because they will demonetize you like that. They don't care. It's Google. They'll do what they want. So I'm moving more into my Patreon, but that is on my YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm very big on sex toys and how they can support recovery. Sex toys, especially for people that have vulvas, can be kind of a tricky thing to navigate because almost every one of them is phallic. And if you're someone who's dealing with the aftermath of an assault, whether it was a penetrative assault or not, the last thing you want to see is a phallic sex toy.
Right.
And so even though some of my sex toys are phallic, I am very big on the opening up of the sex toy conversation and giving people space and showing them that there are other options. And one big thing that I have noticed with that is it's very difficult for people that have gone through sexual assault to masturbate with their hands. Because many of us, especially those of us with vulvas, were told that it's shameful to not only masturbate, but to even go anywhere near that part of your body unless you are changing a pad or washing it. But then you're expected to know what to do when your Boaz shows up.
Girl.
And that's something I also talked about in that class. If we're going to keep it a buck, if we're going to be real about the story of Boaz, especially when it comes to Naomi basically pimping out Ruth.
Yes.
Because that's exactly what she did. Girl, we need some money. We need some way to go. Go over there with Boaz. And the whole conversation of the flowery language of her uncovering his feet ain't got nothing to do with feet. And so if we're going to be real about it, that has nothing to do with feet. She was uncovering his penis to have sex with him, and then he died the next day. So
I've never heard that story told like that.
That's because of the flowery language, and that's like, really think about the fact that most Black women in the church have been expected to wait for their Boaz, to tarry for their Boaz, to do everything to present themselves ready for their Boaz. And Boaz, the story of Boaz is this 80-year-old man who had sex with this girl who he was not married to and died the next day. That's what you're telling me to wait on. That's what you're telling me. And you're not considering how Ruth feels, because this wasn't some grand love story. Her mother-in-law is mourning the fact that both her sons are gone.
Correct.
Her husband is now gone. They are basically the worst of the worst when it comes to that community, because there's nothing worse than a widow, because she's just floating around the community looking for a handout, allegedly.
Right.
Naomi can't do what she wants to do, so she sends out Ruth. So no question of how does Ruth feel about this? It was, I can't do it, you go do it. And she happened to see Boaz in the field doing what he needs to do, presented herself in a way that would catch Boaz's eye. Boaz is sleeping in his tent, and she comes in with no real, he doesn't know her really. I mean, he caught her eye. I mean, he caught his eye, but that was about it. So we want to talk about consent. The question of consent is there as well, because you come in with the expectation of, I'm gonna get what I need to get so I can put me and my mother-in-law in a safe space. You uncover his feet, which is a euphemism for basically taking out his penis. You have sex with him and he dies the next day.
I didn't know Boaz died the next day.
Yeah, like he dies, like if not the next day, he dies shortly after.
Oh, they don't have a lot of time together, right?
Yeah, they don't have a lot of time together. And so the relationship or whatever that he has, it becomes this thing of, well, and Boaz is an old man. So it becomes this thing, well, she's here, so she's in need. So, you know, give her my things. And then he does not last long, both figuratively and literally.
Wow.
And so he's really, so we want to talk about consent. Really, the reason why
yeah,
like it's
my face is this way because I can tell you my 36 years of life, Boaz, the story of Boaz and Ruth was never presented to me that way. And so now my mind is like chewing on what you said.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage you, because I didn't know this either until maybe 3.5 years ago. I would encourage you to read Danielle Thomas's blog on Unfit Christian about that particular story, because she breaks down how we view the story of Boaz, well, Ruth and Boaz, and how it is really masked to us as something to aspire to, when it's really right. We are told that we're supposed to wait for this particular person, but the story, like there's so much, as a sex educator, as someone who is still recovering from Christianity and religion and everything else, when we really are dig into these stories that we are taught, we are never taught the stories and the underlying text of Song of Solomon. We are not taught that a lot of the people that were viewed as not necessarily being married in these spaces did sexual acts. You talked about not liking the words whore, slut, all those things. Whores run the world.
Like, I feel like women are villainized more in the Bible for promiscuity than men are. I mean, absolutely. David and Bathsheba, like, I don't think that he would, I mean, he laments, and you know, one would say that he experienced a depressive episode, but I feel as a female figures were definitely shamed and punished greater for sexual sin. I mean, there was one woman who was caught in the bed in the act of adultery. She was going to be stoned, but I was like, what does it do? I mean, so no, you're right. There's a lot of, and then, so you have to think about the time in which that was, where women were not really valued. Yes. If we think that the Bible is that the Bible is a living text, it has to grow with the generations, right? And so how do we keep holding people to these legalistic Old Testament things that was like for that time in life before Christ? So you're right. I've read 2 books by a Lutheran minister, a woman, Nadia Bowles-Weber. There's one about sex shame, and I actually got that from a Christian life coach, because I told her how much I struggled with sex shame. And last year I did a series about sex shame, and that kind of opened me up to talk so much about shame.